right, folks, welcome back to Resolution, the official podcast for the Restorative Justice Council. You're joining us on episode number 4, and today we're going to be discussing how participants are actually prepared to take part in a restorative process. My name's Glenn Miller, and I'm your host for this week's series. And the RJC's practitioner guidance states that preparation is really important and relevant to the outcome and, I suppose, the success of any restorative justice process. So, as I said, during this, we're going to be talking with Gemma and Rob about how they were prepared. But I'm also joined again by Becky and Paul. And we're going to start with you guys in regards to this whole process. So, Becky, Paul, talk us through how you prepare participants to take part in a restorative process.
So we essentially we talk through somebody's experience of what's happened in terms of the offence, how they feel, what they would like to, what they feel they need, actually, more than anything, from communicating with the other party. We explore expectations about what might happen within a process. We talk through all the different interventions, the ways that can be done either indirectly, like a letter or a message between parties, or leading up to a direct conference face-to-face. In Gemma's case, Gemma was very clear from the onset that she wanted that to be face-to-face. So that's what we focused on. The preparation talked about what that would mean to Gemma and how that might work in practice.
Yeah, and just to follow on from that, obviously part of that process is also assessing risks, motivation. We always have to really drive down on the motivation of someone who's caused harm, and the responsibility that they're willing to admit to and share in that process. And it's continual throughout, like we've discussed before in previous podcasts. That is always ongoing. We always make sure that we leave them in a safe space after any communication of what they're doing next, and if there's any support that they can have after those discussions.
Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in what that looks like step by step. Mm-hmm. If you just want to sort of talk me through how that goes, in terms of where does it actually start? Who do you start with, and how do you follow that through? I think that'd be really interesting for us to kind of get an overview of what that actually looks like practically.
Well, in this case, the referral came in from the prison offender manager that was supervising Rob during his sentencing in prison. And so we learned that Rob was very motivated to engage in restorative justice. So we started with Rob. We explored why it was of interest to Rob, what was important for him to be able to communicate to the victims of the offence, what was really driving his wish to do that, and was that in line with what was realistic in terms of what restorative justice can provide. So with that, our intention was very much to kind of, I guess, preempt any conversation with the victims, because what we didn't want to do was make an approach to Gemma or any of the other people harmed that night by, kind of contacting them if that wasn't something that was likely to really, progress further. That's really important to us, that we keep everybody safe and achievable.
I suppose to add to that, the point that we always strive to do is to take note of that we don't want to re-victimise somebody. So we can do that by doing checks with if they've had any previous support prior to that contact. And I think that's really important. That's where those good, strong partnerships work with either the victim liaison unit or the victim care and advice service.
And that's what very much happened in Gemma's case very quickly. Part of the preparation actually involved bringing in that referral to the victim care and advice service, who are also a part of Safer Communities, and with Gemma's consent, and we visited Gemma jointly And so the actual assessment then became a joint process, so that Gemma was able to explore everything that she wanted to be able to achieve from the communication itself, but also what support might help Gemma to, for one thing, to continue to progress safely through any intervention that might follow, but also all of those impacts that were very apparent, that they were addressed, and that Gemma was given the holistic care that she very much needed and deserved.
Mm-hmm. So even after you've done the initial meetings with both parties, Becky, Paul, do you take time out then to assess the conversations that you've had?
Mm-hmm. We do, and some of those points we then end up going back and speaking to the other party. So there's conversations there with the professionals who've referred in. There's conversations there with Rob about, this is what Gemma has communicated she would like. How do you feel about that? Is that something that we can support you both to achieve? What might help us to achieve this? It's a lot of talking to different people, but restorative justice is about communication, so it's a natural part of that process, and it's key. We need to make sure that the risk is managed if the risk is, presented, whatever those issues might be, but also that everybody's safeguarded, looked after, well supported, well informed, making decisions that are right for them. And that we are achieving what they would like from the process. Do we need to revisit the form of intervention that we might be looking at initially? Do we need to think about introducing support provision, for example, a specialist referral to counselling before we revisit going into an intervention? Is it suitable that comes after a process? It's all that sequencing of support and sequencing of the risk management side of things that remain dynamic throughout a process, so it never stops. It's always a key priority.
Yeah, and in this case, that should always include partnership agencies for any salient information that might impinge on communication or place either at risk emotionally.
And is there an element there whenever you've went through this process that then you're talking to your line manager or anything around, we're going to proceed with this and here's why?
We quite frequently have conversations about how we can give these participants the best possible service. What do we need to introduce to make this as easy is the wrong word to use, but as a considered and robust process as we possibly can. We don't want to drop a ball during this process at all. So for us, we liaised a lot with not line managers as such, but with the people that were directly involved in the care and supervision of Gemma and Rob, and that was Karen, who was Gemma's victim care officer from the Victim Care and Advice Service, and it was Rob's prison offender manager. It was just key, really, that it's not only that prison offender manager in prison be involved, but also his community offender manager, which is effectively his probation officer in the community too. Mm-hmm. And so those decisions were always made collectively, but always remaining victim focused, because we have to keep Gemma at the centre of this. This is what this is about. And as you know, as you may well be aware, sometimes victims don't feel like they are part of a process, that it's something that happens to them, that they don't get to be included within decisions that are made about sentencing, about what questions might be put forward by other professionals. So this is Gemma's time, and we need to make sure that's as efficient as we can make it.
And sometimes that could include looking out from ourselves. We're not a jack of all trades and master of none. I know that we wouldn't be shy in seeking guidance if it need be with the RJC Council and any other professional body that may have come into contact with both participants. It's ultra important to remember that.
So then how do you make sure that any communication that takes place between the participants is safe? And I suppose a follow-on from it is, how do you keep yourself safe?
We try to ensure that the preparation is as long as it takes, that we don't rush that. It's not that we're kind of the clock's ticking, if you like. Sometimes we might have challenges around time in terms of sentencing, when somebody's due to be released, or when things might change for people. But we try to progress things at the pace of both the participants and keep them our focus. So I think in terms of keeping them safe, it's having those constant conversations around the management of it, and also being able to be responsive and flexible to any changes that might come to light, because circumstances do change, life happens, and can sometimes get in the way, and people might go through a process and be working through different stages and then go, this doesn't feel right for whatever reason. It might be something to do with the offence, it might be something completely unrelated. We just have to be prepared and ready to put the appropriate support in place, and that safety extends to the supervision that we get, and we talk readily. We have a co-facilitation relationship with cases like Gemma and Rob's, because we regard their cases sensitive and complex. The Restorative Justice Council would define that case, their case, as being such, because there's multiple victims, there's multiple offenders involved. There's a significant impact in terms of emotional well-being as a result of the offence. And so we very much will follow the guidance of the Restorative Justice Council in terms of managing those cases and how it should be managed. And we integrate that in our supervision. So, we feel confident that we can adhere to that, and therefore we'll give as good a service as we possibly can. As an additional point, the preparation, Paul and I are both advanced registered practitioners with the Restorative Justice Council, and we've completed our sensitive and complex training, which is additional training to that of the initial 3-day practitioner training that RJ practitioners might undergo. And we do that with the appropriate, completion of that training. So you have the knowledge base, and then you have your practical, I think, approval of that, really, and assurance around that being good quality practice, because you go through the Restorative Justice Council's registration. Sure. So it's a lot of preparation, actually, over a longer period of time that's maybe not so apparent at a first glance. Yeah.
Is there anything that's specific around communication, keeping it safe for different types of processes? We mentioned about direct and indirect processes. Do you implement anything differently in regards to safety for those?
We very much look at what it is that the person wants. So if it's been very clear that the person harmed wants a letter and they don't want anything further, then we will look to ensure that that's prepared to a high standard, and that the victim's voice is carried through that, either in the sense of sharing some impacts of the offence or any specific questions that they'd like the other party to answer in the completion of that letter. And then we ensure that the appropriate support is given to the person completing a letter in terms of literacy, how that's physically put together, and how we then would go ahead and share that with the person harmed. If that person then wanted to engage in multiple interventions, that's kind of, or is naturally leading on to further communication, then that's where we would be looking to see what else do we need to do to then progress through the different stages. And crucially, what do we need to do to make Gemma and Rob feel really prepared and informed about the choices that they're making, so that they know that they're making the best choices for them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, just to follow on, I just think it's important that here that we recognise that everybody is different, and offences can impact on even the same offence, but two different people can have so many different impacts. So each case is case by case and followed through the natural process that we use.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's bring Gemma and Rob in here. And Rob, maybe if we start with you, if you just want to bring the microphone close to you, that's all right. Okay. And what we'll do is we'll ask you about your experience of this preparation process. What was that like for you? I know you talked a wee bit about it before in the previous episode, but talk to us very specifically about what this preparation process was like for you.
Easy. That's the main word I can say. Because of the people that surrounded me, Becky and the team made it so easy for me. I didn't know what I was getting into. I just knew I wanted to apologise to my victim. So if it was a letter, if it was... I didn't know nothing about it. So they took the time. There was no rush. It was just easy. Like I say, that's the only word I can say what it was. I didn't know what I knew what I wanted out of it, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. And they just took the time. Like I say, I thought, because I didn't know nothing, I thought right straight away, tomorrow I'll be sending letters or whatever. And obviously we slowed down, we went through it, made sure that I was ready, made sure that the victims were ready, and we went from there.
Okay. And so they obviously met with you on a number of occasions then to go through specific things, making sure that you understood everything okay, you know, that there wasn't anything that you were getting yourself into that you didn't understand, because you were saying there you weren't 100% sure about what it is you were getting into, but you knew what you wanted out of it. How, I know you've said they made it easy for you. What was it about how Becky and Paul dealt with you that made the process easy, if you were able to maybe explain that to us?
It was all it was with me was I, like I say, I knew what I wanted, so they'd sit down with me, they'd go through what could happen next, the next stage, because all of a sudden it could have just been shut down. If Gemma didn't want nothing to do with it, she could have just said no, and that would have been it. So we went through every outcome where it could be, what I wanted out of it, and we just progressed forwards.
Okay, so they took their time with you, made sure that you were 100% aware that there are other things that could potentially impact on this, and just because we're on this doesn't mean X, Y, and Z is going to happen.
Well, that did happen. There was 3 victims involved. One point blank just said, listen, an apology's no good to me. I don't want to know. The other lady, she was happy with the letter. She got the letter off me. And obviously Gemma, we progressed further with Gemma to obviously meet.
Okay. Gemma, let's come to you. The same question to you. Talk to us about that preparation process, because obviously we've been saying it's very, very important that people are aware of what it is that they're getting into. What was it like for you to go through that?
It was pretty much the same as Rob. It was easy. It was, I mean, Becky just, what do you want out of it? And I just said, well, just let her know what I wanted to get out of it, and then it just went from there. But I was told from the start it wasn't going to be a quick process. It was going to be a bit of back and forth. It would take time, but it would get to the end stage, the end result. And like I say, it did take a while, but now that I knew it was there, I knew it was easy. But it's the fact that I think initially I didn't know anything about it, and again I was as much in the dark as Rob. I didn't know. I think I did initially ask, would I be meeting him in a couple of weeks? She's like, no, it's going to take a few months. It's not going to be a few weeks. It could be a few months. It could be a little bit longer than that, depending on what's going on and things like that, and obviously timings between the both of us and things like that. So, but it is, once you get into the system and how it goes, it was quite easy to get into, because the communication was there from start to finish. With all parties involved, really. Okay,
so Becky and Paul put you at ease then, in terms of how they dealt with you. How important was that for you to stay involved in the process then? You know, that the approach that they took?
Yeah, I mean, I found it quite important that like they kept me in the loop really at what was going on, and any communications that they had back from Rob, Becky would ring me and say, we've had, you know, notification back and this is what he said, and what do you think about that? What would you reply to that? Or we'd arrange to meet up and we'd have the chat and we'd go from there. And I was always kept in the loop with each stage of it. And if something was holding something up, then I was always kept in the loop with it.
Okay. Was there at any point during this process, just as for the both of you, that you maybe thought, what on earth have I done? What have I got myself into?
Personally, there wasn't for me, but I was never made to feel that once I've said yes, I have to continue going on with it. It was always, you can change your mind at any point. If you want to change your mind the day before you're due to go and meet him, you feel free. If you get there on the day and you find that you can't walk in and go meet him, you want to change your mind, it's your choice. I was never made to feel that once I'd said yes, I had to stick to that answer. Mm-hmm. But I never got to the point that a few other people thought I needed to change my mind, but they left me to it, knowing again how stubborn I am anyway. But no, I was never made to feel that I had to continue with it.
Internally though, was there any point where you were like kind of going, like in your own head going, what on earth am I doing? I know you say you've been quite stubborn and you were whatever, but I don't want to be putting words in your head, but when you're talking about what we're talking about in terms of doing, doubt has to come in somewhere along the line. Like,
I think initially when I first got to the prison, because I wasn't kind of thrown in at the deep end of, right, we're meeting him next week and you're going into prison. I was taken in there first to kind of, for me to get a lay of the land. And, you know, if you can't handle this, then we'll sort something out. And I think initially getting to that prison first to be shown where the meeting would take place and things like that was a little bit like, a kind of like, oh, hit moment, like what am I doing here? But it was still a case of, well, at the end of the day, I need to get my point across. So I need to get on with it.
So the preparation there wasn't just, what is it you need to say? It was, there may be environments here that you are not familiar with. There may be certain things in terms of this experience. We're not 100% sure how you may react to this. And that was taken into consideration as well then?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'd never been anywhere near a prison, so I wouldn't know the lay of the land for that particular prison that we met in, or any other for that matter. And obviously, like Paul said, everybody reacts differently to the same thing. It's somebody else could have just walked in there and gone, yeah, carry on, whereas other people might have totally freaked out about it. And I did kind of have a bit of a moment where it was, I looked at the building and went, no. But then I think the other half of my head just said, well, just get on with it. You've got something you want to say to him, just get on with it and go and do it. Otherwise, you're not going to get his side of the story and he's not going to get yours. Sure. So,
okay. Now, Rob, you were the person that initially had sought this out. Was there any time during the process when you started going through all this, you started being told what was going to happen, whatever else, was there any point during that you're like going, what am I doing here? Did I really, I know you said you didn't know what to expect, but once it was laid out for you, was there at any point you were like kind of going, do I have to go through with this?
No, it was nothing like that. With me, it was because it wasn't like a barrage. Right, we're doing it now. You're doing it the next thing. It wasn't like that. It was slow, steady, come backwards and forwards, and then the only thing I was really nervous was the meet where I met Gemma for the first time, and like she says, just to see the face, what was behind the mask.
Okay. We'll talk about that in the next episode. We'll get a wee bit more exploration into what that was like. But I think it's pretty clear from having spoken to everybody, you know, the preparation is extremely important here. What I'd like to do is just maybe go back to is Becky and Paul just quickly here in regards to this one thing around the preparation process. During obviously you spend a lot of time going into preparing for things, is there any point where you guys are going, even if you're in there, you're like kind of going, God, I don't know how this is going to work? I know what's the almost as you get close to the anticipation of a meeting potentially happening, what's going through your minds as practitioners?
I'm not going to sit here and say that the time and the journey and the investment and the emotional investment you had, that I'm going to be really, I'll be confident, but I'll be so nervous. But you've built up that preparation, you know is going to see you through. And I think that's why it's important, like Gemma's just spoken about there, is the preparation, including the environments you're going to be in, even down to the seating. And I know we'll discuss that. So yeah, as a practitioner, you're invested in those participants. So if you don't take some of those nerves on board, then I think there's something amiss with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just completely, mirroring what Paul was saying there. I think if you don't feel slightly apprehensive, then I feel like you've let your guard down too much. And that's one of the things that's really important, that you're constantly monitoring how it's going and how people are responding. Part of that's really important is your co-facilitation relationship within a conference setting. So Paul and I can, he knows me worryingly far too well now. It makes me quite nervous sometimes, but it's really, in that kind of situation, it's the best possible support you could ask for, because you read each other's looks, tone of voice, the body language, and you just know that the other person will absolutely pick up if needed, and support, reinforce, lead, take somebody out of the room for a few minutes if they need to have some time out of the meeting itself. All key things that you couldn't do on your own.
Cool. It's because really important, I think, to highlight just the human aspect of this, one in terms of the participants in the process, in terms of that being treated like a person, being listened to, being respected, making sure that your wishes are adhered to, etc. But also from the practitioner's point of view, that you're dealing with some real live issues, and we can't help but be affected by them in terms of what we're hearing, what we're seeing, but also the potential of the outcome, because of even with the group preparation, there's like going, you may not even get the outcome that you're expecting either. There could always be a surprise along the way in the process, and I suppose it's important to highlight that human aspect of what we all bring into this as a process, either from a practitioner's point of view or from a participant's point of view. So thanks very much for being honest there around your thoughts on that. Jim, just going to bring you in here in regards to, I'm aware obviously that the RJC has practice guidance in terms of how it sets out how restorative processes should actually be facilitated. If you could maybe talk to us a wee bit from your perspective about what are the key elements of safe and I suppose high quality facilitation and preparation.
Yeah, I think both Gemma and Rob made some really good points, particularly around not rushing. This is, if you look at a whole restorative process, the meeting is important, but the build up to that meeting is even more important, because there should be no surprises when you get together. Everyone should be comfortable in what's happening. Everyone should be comfortable about what's likely to be said. And you can't predict everything, but as far as possible, all of those conversations should be had. And that's what makes it an effective meeting for Gemma, Rob, and anyone else participating. The other bit that sort of struck out when Becky and Paul were talking, and certainly Gemma and Rob said around the communication. And if you look at the underlying values of restorative justice, it's about relationships, communication, and that should be threaded through everything that's done. And what's clear with Gemma and Rob's case is that you've got practitioners who are invested in them. They're invested in building a relationship that allows this process to happen and be the best possible experience for the people involved. And in terms of our guidance, it is the same practitioners working with both parties. It's not Gemma's got someone working with her and Rob's got someone working with him, and the only time those people come together is at that meeting. It's this whole relationship all the way through, keeping people informed. It can be frustrating the length of time that it might take, but actually going back and saying, Rob, it's going to be another 4 weeks because we still need to do this and this with Gemma, or Gemma, we still got this to do with Rob. That's what makes it successful. It's keeping people involved, keeping them invested, not ignoring them, and taking time and not rushing it. And, I think there's so many things in life where we just expect now that it's going to happen tomorrow. And it's just the way that we are. And with this, it's going back to, let's spend as much time as we need. A month, 6 months, a year, it doesn't matter, because if you want the right outcome at the end, this is where we need to invest the time now.
Yeah, no, I think it's been really, really important to emphasize that, because I think it deals with some of the sort of the myths and things that are out there around the restorative process in regards to how it operates and what actually goes on in a room, that it is this almost close to instantaneous approach, and it's nothing like that. And one of the things that I'm always struck by in regards to the process has been re-emphasized even over these last few episodes, has been the incident itself that we're talking about here today didn't actually take that long, but yet the unpacking of that and the preparation of dealing with the impact of that has taken quite some time. And I think that's also extremely important to realize, that no matter how long the incident happened, the impact on us as humans and the impact on us as an individual is a heck of a lot more than what even the criminal justice system allows it to be dealt with in a way that is effective. The aftermath of this doesn't get dealt with effectively in other processes, where the restorative process takes the time to try and let's deal with the aftermath of this in a way that's effective for all, and that's a time-driven process. Yeah. So thank you very much, everybody, for sharing your experiences in regards to the preparation process. And in the next episode, then, we are going to be exploring the actual process itself. So what actually happened when Rob and Gemma met up. And we'll be looking at some of the nuances that came as a result of where that happened and how that actually took place. So stick around for that episode. But until the next time, folks, look after yourselves and take it easy.